This is my daughter, Erin Aubrey Batkowitz. And at the end of this presentation, you'll get bonus points if you can spell her last name, her married name. Aubrey doesn't count. Erin is a Milligan graduate, and she was a double major in music and psychology, and she went on to earn a master's in music therapy from the University of Kentucky, and now works as a music therapist, and she's had a really interesting career. She and I often talk about how being a good teacher and being a good therapist are similar. And so I thought we'd have one of those conversations and share it with you, and I think there are some things we can all learn. So Erin, first, just explain to us, what does a music therapist do? What does that mean to be a music therapist?
So in music therapy, we're using music interventions that are evidence-based to meet goals that aren't musical. So I'm not in there trying to make anyone ready to go on American Idol or be able to play the piano perfectly, but what we're looking at are physical goals, emotional goals, mental goals, cognitive goals, and spiritual goals. So with each population we work with, we're going to use music in different ways to meet those goals. My populations have tended to be in mental health, addiction, and inpatient psych. And so we're going to use the music that they like to help them, maybe if they have anxiety, to help them relax, or if they have depression, to help release endorphins, to help them be able to access their feelings, their emotions, through something that's very safe to them, music that's been with them since they were born. And so we're going to take interventions such as songwriting, looking at lyrics and analyzing them, listening to music, singing songs together, or playing instruments such as a drum. And we're going to take those and use it to help our clients meet the goals that they need to meet.
Okay, great. So in your most recent job, I know you're in a period of transition right now, but in your most recent job at Journey Pure, you worked mainly with those who are dealing with addiction and other mental health issues, and you mainly worked in groups. Just tell us a little bit about that setting and what you did there.
I'd say about 90% of our clients have what we call comorbidity. They have a drug addiction, but also have some kind of mental health diagnosis. I worked with adults primarily, and so 18 all the way up till 75, 80. You'd be surprised how many grandparents that we get coming through there. So our groups would typically be, sometimes maybe I'd only have 4 people, sometimes I would have 20. Just never knew what the group size was going to be. But I'd say probably on average I would have 8 to 12 people in a group. And they were split up, males and females. And so I would have, a men's group at 10 and a women's group at 1 that day. And I would, pick something that they needed to work through with the theme of recovery, and use music and also discussion and other different, what we call expressive experiential activities to help achieve the goals that we have for that group session. I'd say for group sessions, you also have the added goal of group cohesion. These patients are living in a house together for 30 days. And as you can imagine, it's kind of like MTV Real World. They may argue, bicker. There might be tension. We need them for therapy to happen, for healing to happen. We need them to kind of come together, to bond, to feel safe, to be vulnerable in front of each other. So one thing that I can do in my groups is try to bring people together and try to use the group setting in that way. So that's one of our goals. And sometimes it's just very healing for them to talk about their trauma or whatever they've been through with other people hearing, and so they feel less alone.
Okay, good. So I've been privileged during my time in teaching this particular methods course to teach some of our counseling students who are on the path to becoming school counselors. And I really enjoy teaching those students, and I've learned some things from them. And one of the terms I've picked up from them is this term North Star. So they talk about having a North Star. That to me is definitely parallel to something we talk about a lot in education. So first, if you can kind of tell us about that term and what it means in the context of being a therapist.
Yeah, so I also supervise a couple of music therapy interns who have completed, they're in their senior year, they've done all their coursework, and they come to me for 6 months of an internship. And so one thing that I tell them when we're creating a session plan, just like you all would create a lesson plan, that's our general guide for how the session is going to go, what interventions we're going to use. So I tell them that you want to come up with a couple of North Stars or a couple of goals, themes, main objectives that you really think are the most important for that session. And then I have them kind of craft questions that they're going to ask, or different ways to kind of gauge and assess if the clients are understanding the session. If they're getting something out of it, we want them engaged, we want them talking, we want them singing, we want them sharing. The therapy is more effective that way. So as they're crafting their questions or their moments of engagement or their moments of being expressive, I want them to think about these North Stars. So there's so many questions, say we play a song and we all sing it together. And we do what we call a lyric analysis. We're going to have the clients underline lyrics that relate to what they're going through, and then we're going to use that as a way to get the therapeutic discussion flowing. There are probably hundreds of questions I could ask after that song. What did you like? What did you not like? Have you ever heard of this artist? But I'm going to ask the questions that are going to lead them towards, what I want them to get out of the session.
So in other words, you might go in and you might meet with a group and you might lead them in singing Hey Jude. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you remember when we went to Paul McCartney? Mm-hmm. She took me to hear Paul McCartney and we sang along with 50,000 people. We were there singing Hey Jude. That was a great experience, an amazing experience. If you had an experience like that with your group, it might be fun, but you wouldn't necessarily consider it a success unless what came after it was connected to those North Stars. This is our goal for the day. These are our goals. These are the things we're trying to accomplish. So we're trying to help you get in touch with a past trauma, and we're trying to come up with a coping strategy, an effective coping strategy. Right. Okay. That's
or even to say, did you notice how you felt when you had fun and you're sober? So you can have fun. Yeah, so that would be a very simple way to talk about having fun sober.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by the end of this week, you guys are going to be writing objectives. And sometimes writing objectives can seem tedious and sometimes even feel unnecessary. But objectives are North Stars for us, for teachers. That's the way we put into words, this is what this lesson is all about. And so even if we have a great time or a great discussion about current events or whatever, we're not being successful in terms of our lesson plan unless we accomplish those objectives. So that I really like that term North Stars that I hear you therapists and counselors use all the time.
Well, and I think it also helps with just kind of the group management, because anytime you have a group of people, whether it's kids, adults, whoever, you're going to have those in the group that maybe monopolize, go off on a trail. And sometimes if you have those North Stars in your head, it can be easier to judge when you kind of cut somebody off, when you redirect somebody, when you maybe want to spur the conversation to go further and ask more questions. If you have those North Stars already in your mind, I think it's easier for me to facilitate where the group discussion is going.
Okay, now I'm going to speak teacher language. Not only in your mind, on the board.
Yeah.
Like we put them on the board or on a handout or on a PowerPoint.
Well, and I can say, to make this connection, I know you all are learning more and more about some of the mental health issues that maybe your students have. If they have a history of trauma, how that can play out in the classroom. So what we practice at Journey Pure, and in pretty much all of my jobs I've had, is called trauma-informed care. And so our goal through that is to make this session as safe emotionally as possible. You may be thinking as a teacher, is that really an objective? But when the student feels emotionally safe, there's going to be, you're going to have better outcomes as a whole. There's going to be less acting out, less behaviors trying to express those needs that aren't being met. One thing that they tell us in trauma-informed care is that if the client knows the plan of the session, they're going to be a lot more likely to participate and to feel safe in that session because you're not throwing a surprise their way. So having it, written on the board, a lot of times when my clients come in, I'll have a little handout for them or written on the board what we're going to do that day. And I do think that just helps them not feel as vulnerable, especially if they're coming in my groups going, what is music therapy? Are we going to sing Kumbaya? Am I going to have to do a solo? You know, there can be a ton of fear, especially for adults when having to do music or art or something that feels vulnerable to them. So just seeing a plan, I think, can help any of your kids that, you know, may have a trauma background.
And education research tells us that, just to use your language, having a plan or seeing a plan, students achieve more. They learn more in the classes of teachers who have a plan. So,
And just for our attention spans, I know, like, I think about myself sitting in class here at Milligan. If I knew a break was coming up, I could pay attention a lot better. You know, if they said, we're going to do this for 20 minutes and we're going to take a break, versus when I don't know when this is going to end.
right.
So I just think about that for myself.
So if you want to push pause right now and take a break, we'd be fine with that. All
We
right.
won't know.
Back to our discussion. I love the conversation we had the other day about PEMS and how you get to do things a little bit differently. So first, just a brief explanation of what PEMS check-in is and then how you did it differently.
So I love the PEMS check-in. It stands for physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And the theory behind that is, you know, we talk a lot in therapy about holistic care. And I'm sure you all talk about that in education. Every part of the student, every part of the client, we want to address every part. So the PEMS check-in is them going around and saying, how are they physically today? How are they emotionally? How are they doing mentally? And how are they doing spiritually? I love that. My husband and I do that while we drink coffee in the mornings. But for my clients, what I was noticing is that there were a couple issues with it. Number one, it just took forever because having four things that each person is going to talk about, you've got people going off on tangents. It can take your entire group time. What I noticed also was that pretty much all the therapists were doing that check-in or some type of check-in about how they're feeling that day. And so my clients would come in and they're instantly, I could just see on their face like just boredom, rolling their eyes. Every single group that day had begun the same way. And they're over it. And they've all heard each other say it at least 3 times that day. So I like to start my groups completely differently than that because instantly, you know, I feel like as kids as well, they come in, maybe they have their mind made up already about what this class is going to be, what the session is going to be. You're another adult, there may already be some walls up. So if I kind of, can make the beginning, draw them in, I want them in the palm of my hand from moment one that they enter into my room. So I may still be assessing them. I need to know if any of them are homicidal that day. That's a real issue in my job. If they're suicidal, that's a real issue. I need to know if someone just got news right before my class or my session that was devastating, they're going to act differently in that group. I need to know those things. But I can assess that in a more creative way, in a more engaging way. So I may, as soon as they walk in, they may sit down, I might say, sing with me, and we start singing a song. Or I may have, Play-Doh at their chair, and I say, okay, sculpt this, play on the drum how you're feeling today. Choose a song that describes how you're feeling today. I'm feeling like a DMX song today. I'm feeling like the blues today. I'm sad like a country song, whatever. So I would always try to make that, during whatever that first activity is, I'm assessing from the nonverbals and the verbals, where everybody is. But I don't have to do it in the same way that every other therapist does it. What I find is that builds a ton of rapport. Instantly, they're drawn in. Instantly, they're going to be more receptive. It kind of tills the soil for you that they're going to be more receptive. The walls are going to come down. Maybe not fully, but they're at least going to kind of want to peek over and see what you're doing if maybe they've been shut off.
Good. So I think that one of the things that allows you to do that is you're not just a traditional therapist. You're a music therapist, an expressive arts therapist, or you've used the term experiential therapist. Mm-hmm. So one of my goals for you guys this term is that I help give you some tricks and some more important than the specific tricks, the mindset of becoming an experiential teacher, of becoming that teacher who does it a little differently, who who finds ways to engage students. And what Aaron has just described for us also illustrates the really important point. Beginnings matter. The way you begin a class matters. The way you begin a 6 weeks or a semester, beginnings are incredibly important. And so I've enjoyed having our conversation about that patient-centered beginning to class. We talk in education about being student-centered, about student-centered education. I think that's at the core of our philosophy here at Milligan. You talk about patient-centered therapy and finding creative ways to allow them to be expressive, for the therapy session to be experiential, to engage them. So give some examples of that.
Whenever I am creating a session plan, I'm always thinking of the 5 senses, and I'm thinking of actions. Having them write down, something right in the middle of the session, and then either turn it into me or read it out loud. That I find helps a lot with the vulnerability too. If you just ask them a question and have them raise their hand, they may be scared, especially when it's about like emotional issues. They might be afraid or uncertain about what they want to say, but if they already have it written down, it's easier for them to just kind of read that. That's less vulnerable. I may have them draw. I have paint, crowns, different things that they can use like that. I've used clay. I've used, so thinking about things that they can touch. One of my most recent sessions about self-confidence, we started off using Jenga. They each got to lay down a Jenga piece. We use all types of modalities. So thinking about, I think in teaching what you all do really well is using a lot of visuals and using tactile, things they can touch, things that they can see. I also try to use a lot of humor with my clients, especially with my teens, using a lot of memes, using a lot of things from pop culture. I find that really kind of draws their engagement.
So when we think about student-centered education, one of the ways that I like to say it is this reminder that whether you're an English teacher or a German teacher, PE teacher, the reminder of what the most important thing in the room is. The most important thing in the room is the student. Mm-hmm. And so while I come in with my plan, I always have to remember that what I teach human beings. Mm. And so I want to respond to them. So give an example of a time when you may have had a nice session plan, but when you had to respond to the human beings in the room.
Mm-hmm. I think before I give the example, I'll say that's why it's so important to really know my session plan inside and out, because what I'm doing throughout my session is I am constantly scanning. Are they with me? There's so many ways you can tell if they're with you, and I know you all have questions you ask, you all have different little assessments. For me, I'm looking at their eye contact. I'm watching their hands. Are they doodling? Are they whispering to somebody? I can just feel if I've got them or if they're, here and there, and I will kind of build in some questions to ask, some discussions, some different, ways that I can creatively assess if they are understanding the therapeutic content that I'm presenting. So as I'm scanning, I'm, getting some messages, and one day I had this most incredible session plan, and I looked out and everyone in the room is just, their eyes are heavy and their people are nodding off. And I think it's tempting to think, oh, I'm boring. And you know what? Sometimes you are. And that's a good self-awareness. You don't have to beat yourself up for it, but you can just say, okay, next time, how can I make this more interactive, more engaging? How can I encourage more participation? But I knew what I was doing that day was not boring. And so I just kind of got a little bit vulnerable, and I said, hey, I'm getting a sense right now, I'm seeing a lot of people nodding off, I'm seeing a lot of eyes heavy, is this session boring? Are you all tired? And I just try to say it in a way that's not accusatory. And they said, we had something in the house happen last night. We were all up till 2 a.m. and we had to wake up at 6 and work out this morning, and we're just exhausted. And we're just not feeling therapy today. And so, I still have to accomplish therapy. But I also want to meet them where they are because they're not getting anything out of it at this point. So I said, okay, plot twist, let's turn the lights off. Let's lay down for a minute and I'm going to lead you in a relaxation, guided imagery, intervention. And so we turned off the lights, I let them all lay on the floor, and I just did like a really peaceful and relaxing, breathing and kind of grounding. And then after that, of course that probably made them more sleepy. So after that, I let them get up. I let them have, a 5-minute break, go get water. They came back. We turned on something, the Cupid Shuffle that everyone knows, that dance. We turned it up. We all did it. And then I said, how are you feeling now? Like, are you able to give me 20 minutes of attention for us to get this accomplished? Because I think it's, something that you all can use in your future. I think it's important, and, let's try to delve back into it and just bring our A game, even though none of us feel like it. So they did great. They were able to come back in and get focused. I didn't have anything planned for the next 20 minutes that involved, it wasn't as engaging. I had to really up it. I had to start having them write things down. I had to start having them, read things to each other, talk to each other, come up, stand up. There were just different things I had to employ in the moment where I didn't get rid of my content, but I had to make it a little bit more engaging in that moment.
The North Star didn't change.
No.
The methods changed.
The methods changed. And they were like, you're the first therapist that's ever let us lay down. And so they loved me after that.
Research shows that beginning teachers are really concerned about managing a class, managing a group of people. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about some of the similar challenges we face as classroom managers and you in managing your groups. Tell us some of the strategies that you use. Give us a specific example of a time when you felt like you were being challenged by your group, and so you had to kind of respond to them and make it work.
So one example, do you want to talk about when I've been challenged, or
just when you faced a challenge managing a group, how have you responded to that?
So I was thinking earlier about recently we have a professionals group that's doctors with addiction, lawyers with addiction, accountants, literally millionaires. And I had a doctor, I handed out the songs that we were going to be doing that day, and he looked at it and said, "This is a very stupid song. I hate this song. Why would you choose this song?" It was the first time I'd ever met him, so that was very shocking to me. The strategy that I used was to ask questions. Like I said, I think at the beginning of my career, I probably would have gotten offended. I would have become defensive. Living my whole life in a 5-foot body, getting my height from Coach Aubrey.
It's always the father's fault.
Blonde hair, whatever, always looking younger than I am. I kind of carry around this insecurity that people don't respect me. And maybe there's some truth to that insecurity. So I think there's times when I've maybe would have jumped in like, "Hey, that's hurtful. What, okay," or just kind of appeased. "Okay, well, we won't do that song then. That's, if you don't like it, I'm sorry." That's probably my more, common response. But one thing I think that the most important thing I've learned about group facilitation is to put safety over forced respect. And I think with kids, that's even easier for me to jump to the forced respect because I am more of a power situation over them. With these clients, we're both adults, so that respect, I spent many years trying to kind of force that from them or gain that or assert that from them. So to create safety, I'm going to be aware of my defenses coming up because I am getting defensive. I think it's a really good song and I've worked really hard learning it. But I'm going to be mindful of that and aware of that and not jump to defensiveness, and I'm going to go straight to questions. The first question I asked was, That's really interesting. I haven't had anybody else say that about this song. I'm curious, why you felt like you had to say that in front of the whole group. I'm curious, what you thought that statement would do, if you thought maybe it would make me not play the song, or, what was your intent behind that statement? Why do you think you said that so boldly? And he really got stumped. He said, I don't know why I said that. I really don't. And then I said, how did it make everyone else in the group feel when he said that? Everyone was like, kind of made us feel bad for you. It made us embarrassed. There's some tension now. I'm afraid to like that song because he thinks it's stupid, whatever. And then I said, I don't want to project onto you, but when it's me, sometimes if I feel scared of being vulnerable, I might become aggressive or argumentative. I might use humor because he was really making fun of the song. I might use humor to kind of deflect from my feelings. I don't know if that's what's going on here. I'm just letting you know that that's what sometimes happens to me. If my tone had shifted just slightly, he could have gotten really angry and really defensive. But I kind of saw his walls going down, and he said, wow, you're right. This song reminds me of something I've done wrong, and I feel very angry with myself. And instead of wanting to feel that anger, I'm going to it's easier to be angry at you, and it's easier to make jokes. And this song does make me angry because I feel shame when I think about these things that I've done wrong. And so that was like a great therapeutic moment. I can handle anger, if it comes to the surface versus the subconscious thing that's causing someone to be passive aggressive towards me. When you bring it to the surface, it's much easier to process through and work through. So it ended up being a really successful moment. But I think, especially when I worked with teenagers, I know it's so hard to try to want to think you're cool. And I can bring in the coolest thing in the world, and there's just eye rolls, and they think it's stupid, or, they want to act that way. Because there's just this not wanting to seem vulnerable in front of your friends. So I think instead of feeling defensive if they think something you're doing isn't cool or is stupid, asking some questions, but then still doing your plan anyways.
Yeah. So as our term goes on, I'll talk about 2 terms. I'll talk to you guys about mindfulness. So when you find yourself in that setting, hey, believe it or not, this was a millionaire doctor, right, by the way, who challenged you. This may shock you, but sometimes middle school or high school students might act like millionaire doctors. Because we're all human. They're going to act like they know everything and they know what's best. Mm-hmm. And man, it's so easy when you're the teacher to take that personally, or in your case as a therapist. And it's really important to be, first of all, mindful, pay attention to what's going on. In other words, you make decisions from here and not out of emotion, not reactionary. The second thing I talk about is emotional objectivity. He at its root, his problem was with himself, not with you. So what I heard you express a truth, I think it was even earlier this morning, that every behavior is, do you remember that?
Every behavior is a reflection of a need that's not being met. And that's helped me remain objective. I mean, I'm a very emotional, deep feeling person. So this whole remain in your head but not your heart, that does not come naturally for me. That's something I've really had to work on. But I find that, really taking deep breaths and reminding myself, this has nothing to do with me. Also, another phrase that I like to use is the story in my head. That's from Brene Brown. The story in my head is that nobody respects me. The story in my head is that I have worked so hard on this lesson plan or this session plan, and I pour my heart into this. I don't get paid very much. I'm thinking these kids don't appreciate me. They don't appreciate what I do. They just, want to, and after they keep doing that enough times, it is going to kind of wear you down. So keeping in mind their behaviors are a reflection of their needs or something going on in them, not a reflection of you. If you've put in your work and you're prepared and you are offering a lesson that's really engaging and quality, then I think that helps me too when I know and feel confident in what I'm presenting to them. then those insecurities don't really creep up in me if they're kind of resistant to them.
Good. Later on in the term, we're going to watch a video. You guys are going to watch a video of some really accomplished teachers. And they're mostly math teachers, as I recall. And the video is all these teachers working with students who are having trouble. And one of the things that always sticks out to me when I watch this with students is the teachers are so calm. There's none of this, why can't you get it? Why aren't you trying? Mm-hmm. It's okay, well, let's go back and tell me how you did this step. And they're just so calm, and they're very mindful. They keep that emotional objectivity. Now, just so you don't get scared, it's not my intention to tell you to keep your heart out of teaching. I think your heart needs to be invested in your teaching. I think what I want to help you try to do when it comes to classroom management is keep your heart out of the way, because you're a human being, and that can get in the way. But we want to kind of turn that to our advantage and make that maybe the best thing about us as teachers, that we are human, that we connect on a deep level with our students, and we learn to do what's in their best interests, and not lash back at them.
I was thinking about, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about an example. I had a lady who was at my rehab for 90 days. Most people are there for 30, but her insurance approved her for 90. And so she was in several of my groups, and I started noticing a pattern in her of her not paying attention, and it got worse every week. And she's a very nice person, so and every other client was really engaged. So I knew it really wasn't what the material I was presenting. So one day I just went up to her and I said, hey, as private as we could be, is there anything that I can do to help you be more engaged? I've noticed, I've seen you doodling, I've seen you talking to others, I've seen you nodding off. Is there anything, could I sit beside you? Do you need to get up and walk around every 10 minutes? Let's talk about what you need. Instead of, I think, my impulse is to go like, oh, well, she's a bad client. She never pays attention. And she told me, like, they just gave me this new medicine and it makes me really, really drowsy. And so we started a thing where I set a timer on my watch, and every 10 minutes it beeped a little bit. She got up and took a couple laps around, and then she came back, and we did that for the next 2 months, and it went great. She was much more engaged. I knew that I kind of had to tweak my sessions just a little bit to her, add more engaging things, add more moments to write, more moments to draw, more moments to do something really tactile, or I was going to lose her. And doing those things really helped the rest of the group keep their engagement up too.
Those are really good examples. So when we write lesson plans a little later in the term, we'll talk about the interventions and the differentiation that we have to do to reach individual students, and I want you to feel empowered to do that as you plan. And research shows that successful teachers find a way to reach individuals, and if that means you accommodate in different ways, then we're good with that. We want to help you learn how to do that and be effective at that. Well, Erin, thanks. I'm really proud of what you do professionally. It's really important work, and I think I would say it this way: while you and I are father and daughter, I would say that teachers and therapists are at least cousins, if not brothers and sisters. We're both in the business of trying to make people's lives better. I've
told you before, I really wish I had taken some education courses, because even just some things you've shared with me, if I've had a troubling session, I've called him and said, what can I do to get these people? And even I'm about to start a new contract with teens in a psych hospital, and I'm already asking him for ideas of how I can get the engagement up, how I can get them to like me, or maybe not even like me, but at least get something out of my session, at least get their goals met. I think that as a new teacher and as a new therapist, something that is important to be aware of is your own level of shame or insecurity. I think at the beginning of my career, if somebody was resistant, I kind of felt like maybe what I was, providing to them, the content, maybe was less than, but eventually what I grew to realize was kind of what we were talking about. It really wasn't about me. So if I really was prepared and really put my heart into it and really gave them something of quality, then it was really about something going on with them. And I was able to learn to address that in ways where I didn't feel as defensive or as worn down, just kind of in that insecurity. And shame's such a natural thing, to feel. And it's, so just give yourself compassion when you do feel that, but kind of keep yourself in check. I think that's something that you do well. The more confidence you have in yourself, kind of the more it dismantles the resistance of the group.
Oh, okay. So now at the beginning of the semester, no pressure for me to live up to that. Well, thanks. All right. Well, I appreciate it's been a really helpful discussion, and we're going to use this to set the course for some of the important topics we're going to cover this semester. Hope you enjoyed our conversation, and I'll look forward to hearing your responses from the prompts that I've given you on Canvas. Thank you.